Good evening. I'd like to call our city council meeting of Monday, April 7th, 2025 to order tonight. If you'd join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our designated pastor's not here tonight, so I'll open with prayer, if you'll join me. Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight and we thank you for your grace and your mercy. We thank you for the gifts you've given us. We thank you for the good weather we've had just recently. And we pray for those that have been affected by the tornadoes and the floods. Father, we know those things don't get fixed in hours or minutes, but months and years sometimes. So we pray for those people, pray for their finances and their safety. And we just ask you to give us wisdom as a council tonight as we go about our city's business and lead us and guide us in that. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
With that, we'll look at our minutes from our last meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the March 17, 2025 City Council meeting.
Second. Got a motion and a second to approve those minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now let's move down to our appropriation ordinance and review it and approve it. For those of you at home and new to the business here, we get this in advance and we review it, and the city staff reviews it before they put it to us. So very seldom are there any questions.
I move for the approval of the appropriation order number 3A dated March 26, 2025.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, under visitors, Ms. Sue Jones is here to update us on the TNVR of the feral community cats. And she'll come to the podium and talk to us for a minute or two.
Jones, 1870 Drive, Augusta.
Excuse me, Sue, pull the mic down just a little. That's probably better.
So I want to start off, and as of through mid-September, we trapped in the city of Augusta. And also give you a little bit of history. 2016, 2011. Today, or what we've been doing. Now, situation council on two occasions. We had a gentleman come to the council indicating that his dog concerned about that, the council gave marching orders to contacted the director and learned that
She's trying to fix.
The veracity of the story. Last month, an individual came back and his dog had given his training and very well.
Am I missing something?
there you go.
Oh, I'm missing something. Trap, neuter, vaccinate, and return. So every cat that we take to get fixed is vaccinated against rabies and feline distemper. So let's put that little bit of misinformation to bed. Secondarily, I contacted the property manager again, only to find out that there are no cats at Osage Manor remaining. After the first trapping, 2 of them disappeared and were never seen again. 1 of them was adopted, and the 4th only shows up sporadically. So please be careful when you have someone that comes to you with a story about feral cats attacking them or their pets, because in this instance, neither story is accurate. And I would hate, and the reason I bring this up is not because shame on anybody, it's because I see second guess what it's done, this program. Person should not be allowed to be of a program in Augusta. We are quite respected in Wichita with Friends of Felines for the activities. They're amazed at the efforts. And it's because of this council. You took a chance, and it's working, and we will continue to go forward. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Nope.
You don't?
Ooh.
Okay.
So they're saying there's none at Osage now?
No. The only
Then
cat.
why
now-
did they cut their food, just one
Well,
person's eating?
Thank you. Because of the constant complaining of that one person. Michelle just got so tired of listening to that constant complaint for 2 cats that she finally told the residents, don't feed them anymore. The only cat, and I did start driving around through there after that last meeting you guys had to see, did we miss something? Are there new cats that have moved in? And the answer is no. The only cat that I saw in the neighborhood was across the street on somebody's porch. It was a small cat with a collar on, and it had 3 legs. So I don't imagine a 3-legged cat was going to encounter a big dog. And it's sad because the residents of Osage Manor enjoyed feeding those cats. They took pleasure in that. And that pleasure's been taken away from them because of one person who doesn't like cats. So does that answer your question, Bill?
Well, in his defense, I believe he received a ticket for a vicious dog.
Okay, that segues into another comment that I'd like to make. During one of my trips around Osage Manor, I happened to see that individual, and he was walking behind the bank on the sidewalk, 10 to 12 feet in front of his dog. That dog is not on leash. I saw him again this morning when I stopped by Osage Manor. The dog is not on leash. So my guess is, Mike, is that if the dog's not on leash, he sees a cat, that's normal behavior for cats and dogs. And if a cat got cornered, a cat's going to scratch. It's going to defend itself. That's just the nature of the animal. but he is walking the dog off leash, which is against the ordinance. So the other thing I want to mention, I know that part of your discussion had to do with liability, and I think, Mike, you brought that up. I
Yes.
did some research. There are 13 states plus the District of Columbia that have statutes on the books dealing with feral cats. Not a single one of them has anything to say about liability. Liability is typically attached at the local level if the ordinance stipulates that the caretaker of a feral cat or a community cat is indeed its owner. Since Augusta was very specific in identifying the fact that caretakers are not owners, I would think that liability is not attached to the city. There's very little case law, but what I did see indicates that liability is not typically attached to communities at large. So, any other questions?
Nope.
All right, we will continue to trap.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank
Sue.
Thank you, Sue. Are there any other visitors here tonight that are not on the agenda? Okay, we'll move on to our first order of business. Ordinance number 2241, authorizing a conditional use permit to allow an event center at 427 North State Street. Staff.
So, Mayor and Council, this item and your next couple of items are coming to you as recommended items from the Planning Commission after they have already taken action. For presentation of this first ordinance, I want to turn it over to our Assistant City Manager, Cammie.
Good evening. So the applicant for this conditional use is Debbie Bowman, and she's in the audience this evening too, if you have any questions. She is requesting a conditional use permit to operate a multi-purpose meeting and event center at 427 and 429 State Street. The property is generally located on the west side of State Street between 4th and 5th Avenue and is zoned C1 Main Street Commercial District. Surrounding properties are also zoned C1. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on January 13th, 2025 to consider the conditional use permit. The item was tabled and staff was directed to contact the applicant regarding operating hours. The Augusta Planning Commission reconsidered the case on Wednesday, March 12th, 2025, and recommends approval to the City Council with the following conditions. 1, development and maintenance of the site shall be in conformance with the approved site plan. 2, development is in conformance with all Augusta zoning regulations and building codes. 3, a conditional use permit shall be considered to be exercised when the use has been established or when a building permit has been issued and substantial construction accomplished. When such permit is abandoned or discontinued for a period of 1 year, it shall not be reestablished unless authorized by the Planning Commission or legislative body. 4, if the zoning administrator finds that there's a violation of any of the conditions of the conditional use, the zoning administrator, in accordance to enforcing the other remedies set forth in the zoning regulations, may declare that the conditional use is null and void. And 5, the proposed public operating hours will be Sunday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., Friday and Saturday, 8 a.m. to midnight, and staff will be allowed to operate outside of those hours. So if they're cleaning up an event or something, the event would end by 10 p.m. or midnight, but staff would be able to stay later to pick up if needed or come in earlier to set up. There were no protest petitions received during the protest period following the public hearing. And I'm available for any questions from the staff report, or Debbie's here as well if she'd like to get up and say a few things.
I missed a point that you said there, and I apologize.
It's okay.
Something about 1 year. Could you review that for me real quick? That if it's not completed in 1 year?
This is just for the conditional use.
Okay.
So if there's not a building permit issued, so this property in 2013 had a conditional use permit that was approved for a very similar type of business. Those building permits were never pulled, and that conditional use expired after 180 days. So this is kind of set up in a similar manner, but after multiple conversations with Debbie, she indicated that she's hoping to get some of the construction done, I believe, within the next year and a half. She's also looking to relocate her existing business into this building. There's some construction work that needs to be done for that to happen. That use is an allowed use. This would just be on the conditional use for that event center type business.
Any other questions, guys?
So to clarify, it sounds like it'll be a mixed-use space at this point, if it's one allowable already and one that's conditional use?
Correct. So her current business is, and I will try, you can correct me, is kind of table linens and different types of linens for special events. So it fits in with kind of the wedding and meeting type of business. So that office space will be housed there, as well as eventually being open for a meeting space and weddings and different receptions.
Debbie, I got a couple questions. If you would, please come to the mic.
Debbie Bowman, address 14035 East Spring Valley Street, Wichita, Kansas.
Do you have a timeline for the completed project?
No. It'll be several phases.
Yeah, she had indicated to staff, and her architect, Bill Morris, had indicated it would be a 3-phase approach. So the first phase would be getting kind of the main floor remodeled in a way where she would be able to relocate her existing business. Second phase would possibly be the upstairs area, and the third and final phase would be the outdoor rooftop patio area.
Would that be the same time? Because you were doing bathrooms in the back by the alley, correct?
This will eventually be on the main floor.
Okay. How long have you owned that building?
2009.
2009.
Is that building, do you feel that building's safe? I know there's a tree in the back alley that has fallen, collapsed on that building. Is that harming your foundation at all, or the roots from that tree or anything?
I don't know if there's any roots that are compromising anything right
Okay.
now. That is one of the first things we're going to take care of, though. Hopefully in the next few weeks here, we'll be cleaning up the west end outside and cleaning up the tree, getting all the debris out of there, and then as well as all the concrete back there.
The community development office has been in contacts with a contractor who was calling in and asking questions about how they could accomplish some of that work in the back. With it being located on the alley and off of State Street, what was allowed, what wasn't allowed, what could be closed off, what parking spaces could be used. So they have been in contacts with the building inspector on how to navigate that.
That building did have a fire escape at one time, correct?
Correct.
But it is not there now.
Correct.
Do you think you'll have it finished in 5 years, 7 years, 10 years? You don't have any timeline at all?
Well, it's got to be done within 5 years.
Okay.
Were you able to talk to Mr. Morris in reference to what I talked to you about?
I did not. I'm sorry. He's swung in my office this afternoon during lunch, and we were talking about trees, and I did not. But Kip brought up that due to the occupancy levels, that the building would need to have the sprinkler system installed as well, just because of the occupancy, that it would trigger that. So he wanted to make sure that we communicated that to you and to Bill during the site plan review and the building plan review process.
So Mayor and Council, when you have the provisions in here that speak to the different conditions for these properties, where that second one references development in conformance with Augusta zoning regs and building code. So one of those building codes is going to be the fire code. And so when the project does move forward in that way, and they have construction plans, all those sort of things to do the project, that's when the compliance component will be checked out by our inspectors, and that's really when it's triggered in this process. But I think it's a good point to make sure that the property owner is aware of some of the challenges and things they're going to have with working on those buildings and with those uses. But where it comes into play is in the building code review and the construction process, and this action does not prevent any review like that. You're actually making it a specific condition, just stating it explicitly that you have to comply with those regulations.
And this is kind of the first step because they're not going to move forward with developing some of those plans. They've put together some site plan reviews, and that's part of the conditional use permit process, is you do have to submit site plans. But as far as engineering and designing any other additional work, that would come after this use is approved, because she may not use it in the same manner or need to do as much of the renovations if this isn't approved.
I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that, Ms. Bowman. When you have 5,000, over 5,000 square feet, and the facility becomes an A2 occupancy in the fire code, and you would be required to put in a sprinkler system in there, or if you have over 100 people, and that because you have 6,241.14 feet in your building.
Okay, yeah, that is new to me this evening. It has been brought up
That's
in
why
the
I want
past.
to, that's why I want to
and
make sure you're aware of that.
Well, so that's new to me tonight.
So also the architect and the engineer that you hire to develop the plans, that's when it would be part of that process as well.
Absolutely correct. That's your architect's part of that.
Yeah.
But I mean, Bill has asked that question. We've asked that question. in the
I
past.
don't recall. So none of the reviews we did were final reviews. They were reviews to make sure we had appropriate documentation for a conditional use permit. None of those reviews would count towards the issuance of a permit.
Okay, very good.
And Cammie, to your previous comment, was the 1 year period, was that outside the norm, or is that consistent with what we typically do with the permit period?
I think it's outside of the norm of what you do right now. I'd say a lot of the conditional uses I've seen come through since I've been here, the use is kind of already established, or it's going to be established relatively quickly.
Mm-hmm.
This use is going to take some time to get it up and running. And so, it's been 12 years since the other conditional use was recommended and approved. So I wanted to make sure we didn't have another decade that went by without the opportunity for this to come back before the Planning Commission and the governing body if the use wasn't established. I've seen this type of language used in other municipalities that operate with the same zoning regulations. So I felt comfortable putting it in here to kind of have some of those triggers and safeguards in place. Again, this doesn't preclude her from using the building in any other manner that is allowed in C1, and relocating her established business there is an allowable use and doesn't need the conditional use part. And there's still a list of multiple different businesses that are allowed by right. This would just be an opportunity to bring the specific one back in case you wanted to put on additional conditions or even release some of these conditions.
And Ms. Bowman, as far as the 2009 purchase and then did you say
It's
2013
in 2013.
original
Yes.
conditional use permit? Can you just walk us through some of the history that maybe when it was issued and then didn't execute on that plan? Kind of just give us some history and perspective on what's going on.
Sure. Well, 2009 purchased it. It was going to be utilized for Bowman and Company for my event rental business. And just love the building so much. And I could just see it as an event venue also, which definitely coincides with my work. So let's see, 2009, 2013, I think 2013, 2014, realized that the structure was not safe and couldn't hold more than, I think Paul Sullivan, the structural engineer, said it couldn't hold more than 10 people. So at that point knew that if I went to have anything up there, needed to have some structural work done. So, and then it also needed a new roof too around that time. So it was very expensive for what needed to be done. And so 2015, I applied for a historic grant. Well, actually 2013, 14, I think Bill Morris helped me get the building on the National Historic Register. So got on the National and State Historic Register. Then 2015, applied for a grant for the structure of it and was awarded the grant. So awarded $90,000 towards the structure. So, and then I had to contribute 30% of that over and above. So put 90,000 between 2016 to 2019. Structural work was done. A new roof was put on. And so that's 2019. 2020. 2020 was COVID. I was going through a divorce. My divorce went on for 4 years. So it was a possibility that I was going to have the building taken away from me through the divorce. And it actually was. The judge ordered the building to be sold at auction, but got it back. So it's just kind of been, that's kind of the.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. So thank you. That helps me put things in order there.
Ms. Bowen, I don't really think we're picking on you, but that building is so important to our history of our downtown. It's really important. So we want to see it active. We want to see it back into our society. So that's why I'm asking so many questions, because it's a very important building to our history. And I want nothing more to see you revive that and make it a great place. And that's, I just wish you could get done tomorrow. That's all.
Mayor and Council, there was a question asked a little bit earlier, so I'm just going to throw it out. You asked about the year that is given for the building permit before that essentially expires. So it is in our code of ordinances. Now, I think when you're doing a conditional use permit, that's the whole point of conditional use, is to set special conditions. And so I think that went into the decision-making on the length of time. But in your code of ordinances, the section of our code specifically related to building permits, there is a building permit shall become null and void after 180 days after issuance. Essentially, unless there's been activity on the permit. So even in a general scenario, you would ask the question, is this outside of the norm? It is on the books to have that allowance already out to that 6 months, and then it becomes null and void. But then the process that you're using is conditional use, which allows you to take other contexts into consideration. And so therefore, I don't think the practice is out of the norm at all. Just the length of time that's being granted is a little bit longer than what your code typically calls for.
Right, but this would just be on the conditional use part. We'd still follow this for building permits. Yeah, like as they issue the permits, we would still follow that.
I think the only concern, if I'm just going to be completely transparent, the only concern that I really have, I think the venue idea is a great idea. The only concern I've got is just the ambiguous timeline that we're working with that causes me some pause, since we've already gone through so many years. And that's why I asked the context of maybe some history. And I don't want to put you through the ringer in the public spotlight here, but I think from a curiosity standpoint, I would be curious if there was a business plan with maybe some financing or some other things to help maybe pull this through to completion, or if you're relying primarily on your own. And you don't have to answer here publicly, but that's where my mind is as far as
Yeah, I understand, but that's not part of the conditional use permit process.
Correct.
And the conditional use permit process is really to look at the use of the land and the building in this case, and if that fits into the character of the neighborhood. And the conditional use allows you to put conditions on it to mitigate any negative impacts that you see. So while I know there's some history and some hesitation there from a business model standpoint, that's not the action that I feel like is before the governing body this evening.
I don't disagree, except for the extended permit window that we're discussing, right? That is relevant to the decision,
Yes.
and that is contextual within the time that we're
Yes.
talking about, right?
I feel like I stated earlier, put this in there to try and avoid it being a decade before the conditional use would come back before a governing body. The year, I know she's applying for some grants, and so we know how uncertain that environment is right now. I think we wrote that in here even before the uncertainty of the grant environment, but it's definitely getting worse. So we wanted to make sure she had time to apply for grants as needed, and still be able to issue those building permits and keep that going. So we want to support you as much as we can.
Now, Jake, until she knows whether we are going to allow this,
Totally get it.
she hasn't went forward with getting architectural and engineer stuff done. And that could take months.
Right.
So I'm okay with giving her extra time.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm just sequencing it all together, getting the
Yeah.
whole picture built out. See this as the first domino for her. Yeah.
Are there any other questions from the council?
Mr. Mayor, I move for approval of ordinance number 2241, authorizing a conditional use permit to be an event center at 429 North State Street.
Second.
Is the motion correct? Because it 429,
I have 427.
427.
Different addresses.
That's me.
427.
427.
427, I think is.
427 is the main address that's used. Yes.
For clarity, if I can direct this to staff, in the motion, would you prefer that they say with the conditions as outlined by the planning commission?
Yes, yes.
So that would be the preference is the motion to approve the ordinance, including all of the conditions as recommended by the planning commission.
are you okay with that addition?
So moved.
Yeah, so moved.
And second.
All right. At that point, will you call the roll, Erica?
Still typing, sorry. Martin,
Yes. Yes.
Bailey,
No.
Scott,
No.
Richardson,
No.
Davis,
Yes.
Marr,
Yes.
I have the motion passed. Is that correct?
yes.
4-3, I believe.
Okay.
Yes.
I was just making sure I had them all in there.
Thank you, Debbie. Okay. Item number 2, one-step preliminary and final plat for the Redbird Meadows edition. Staff?
Hello. This property is currently owned by Troy and Jenny Palmer. They have requested that the subject property be platted. The subject property is generally located north of Highway 54 and east on Diamond Road. This is in the Augusta planning area. The subject property is 4.3 acres. The applicants are planning to sell the property in an existing house for residential use. And the applicant owns numerous adjacent properties as well. The new owners are here, Missy and Matthew Meckel, as well. If you have any questions, they'll be available. There are 2 parcels to be platted. The 11.3 acre tract of land is located within the planning area. Again, lot 1 is part of the parcel address is 9718 Southwest Highway 54. And there is currently a house on the property that is being split from the larger whole. And then there's lot 2, which is addressed as 9714 Southwest Highway 54. The east boundary line is being adjusted as part of lot 1, and a parcel to the north is being combined into lot 2. So, I don't know.
as you guys are pulling up those,
Yeah, we had some illustrations.
it would be helpful to just walk us through those illustrations, because as I
Yeah.
read the packet, it may not have been completely clear.
Kind of confusing.
There aren't any others.
Trying, sorry. Touchscreen's giving me
There
trouble.
you go. Okay. So we'll start with this one. Everything that is the hashtag kind of orange lines, and then the lot 1 and lot 2 are all owned by Troy and Jenny Palmer. Actually, I believe that bottom left parcel is owned by them as well. It's vacant land. So lot 2 there's just some minor boundary adjustments to lot 2. Lot 1 is being split from that greater piece that has the orange hashtag. So that's all one parcel right now. So lot 1 is being split from that. So the plat includes lot 1 and some boundary revisions to what is lot 2. Lot 1 has a house on it currently. It's a residential use right now. This was just what they were wanting to split it so they could complete a real estate transaction to sell that property.
To sell lots 1 and 2,
Just lot 1.
just lot 1.
Yes. But part of lot 1 was the boundary adjustment of lot 2, because there are I'd say there's some gravel roads out there, and there's some other storage buildings. And so to clean up those boundary lines so they didn't go through the middle of buildings, they made some boundary adjustments.
And so lot 1 with the revision that's proposed is going to become the 4.3 acres?
Yes.
Okay.
Cami, does this have to go to Butler County for anything?
Oh, it did. Sorry.
Okay.
Finish reading my report. The Butler County Board of Commissioners did consider and recommend approval for this on March 11th of 2025. And the Augusta Planning Commission also considered the case and recommended approval on March 12th, 2025.
And if I'm reading it right, lot 1 is zone C3 currently?
That's the next item, but it's one of those cases where zoning regs and our
Yes.
land use map do not match.
Yeah.
But I have classified it as C3 based off of the zoning regulations and not
Well, can be converted to an R.
RR, and that's the next item before you.
Right.
Yes. I will say the zoning and land use to the north, south, the north and south and west, they're all rural residential. So further off of Diamond Road, I think there's at least 3 homes, I believe, three homes there. And then there's more homes also along the highway on that side if you even go past the property that the Palmer's own. And then even to the north, there's some additional homes there.
And lot 2 stays as is zoning wise?
Yes, we're not rezoning lot 2.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve one-step preliminary and final plat Redbird Meadows Edition.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now, we'll move down to item 3, ordinance number 2242, changing the zoning district classification on this property.
Yes.
Staff.
So while we were going down this endeavor, we might as make sure all of our ducks are in a row. And I know one question I had was if they were keeping the existing home or if they wanted to rebuild a home or build a new home. So we wanted to make sure they would be able to do that in the future. Or if God forbid something happened. So I wanted to make sure that it was properly zoned as rural residential. And our zoning regs, it does state that all property along US 54 is zoned as C3. However, in our comp plan and our future land use map, this is identified as ag. But I went ahead and went with the designation that I think the zoning code probably speaks to and is an actual city code and an ordinance. So I had it classified as C3, and we are requesting a rezone to rural residential. The Planning Commission did consider and recommend approval for that on March 12th. There was a public hearing held on that date, and staff has not received any protest petitions since that public hearing. So I will stand for questions or recommend approval of ordinance 2242. Yeah. Mhm.
Is that still a commercial zone or is that? Because
Go up to the podium.
this one, I
Yeah.
think that's.
Ma'am, we can't hear you.
We couldn't hear your question.
I'm up here. I also have a loud voice. No, but what I was wondering is that, so we are looking at purchasing lot 1 and lot 2.
And lot 2.
And lot 2. Lot 2 just has a manufactured home and several acres. And the way that they're both zoned right now, you can't get a mortgage on them. So that's why you can't get a mortgage without a rebuild. So looking at lot 1, lot 2, and then I saw 9716, which is the house that's behind, is also. I thought at the time that the geodesy survey had lot 1, lot 2, that they were all kind of
That-
together.
It's been platted.
Okay.
They've both been platted.
Okay.
But I thought the rezone was just for the lot 1 where the existing house was.
And yeah,
So
there's
they're-
houses on both, and we are long-term goals hoping to purchase lot 2 as well. So we just trying to get it all
Yeah.
done at the same time.
And I'm happy to go through lot 2 and get that through the process.
Okay.
If you want to after this.
Yeah.
That was an oversight. I know we had lot 1 and 2 on the plat.
Yeah,
But
and-
we thought just the house was getting zoned, so.
Yeah, well, that's because we're looking at the mortgage on lot 1. The other, not necessarily needing a mortgage, but absolutely have to have the rebuild for lot 1, and that's our primary residence. So
Right.
just wanting to make sure that we have that all kind of taken care of.
Okay, we can work through that. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, yeah. And I wondered last time if it was, because it was kind of unclear, but so.
So Cammy, do we need to?
Uh-oh.
Would we need to include in a motion lot 1, lot 2, and 9716?
We have to have a
Just one?
public hearing to have lot 2 rezoned.
Okay.
So we gotta go through all this again?
No. Just the rezoning part, not the plat was the part that took the longest working with the engineer. I can do the rezone just from staff. It'll go through planning commission, it'll go through city council. It'll take about a month. But it won't have to go through the engineers again. We won't need any more information from you.
And lot 1 should be good to go a
Lot
lot
1 is
sooner
good
as
to
far-
go.
And that's
As-
our main concern. That's where the mortgage and that's what's been holding us up.
Lot 1 is
that for
good to go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so lot 2 we can kind of delay, but just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
that they were all going to be the same.
Lot 1 is
Yeah.
good.
Good.
And then I can start working on lot 2. Once they approve it, yes.
Yeah,
it's good.
okay, yeah. Any other questions?
So are you saying we need to go ahead with a motion for lot 1 and 9716?
No, I would just
just-
recommend approval of ordinance 2242, and that'll be to approve the rezone for lot 1.
So Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve ordinance number 2242, changing zone district classification for property located at 9716 Southwest Highway 54 from C3 general commercial to rural residential district.
Second.
Got a motion and a second.
9716. It's 9718 and 9714. 9716 is different. That's their old. Correct. So 9716, I believe that.
Our
property was 9718 and 9714.
So we had to get, so that large parcel was addressed as 9718. When this was getting split into lot 1, we reached out to the county to get an address. So we got, I'm happy to talk to you. I can reach out to you in the morning too. Because
there's 3 mailboxes, 9718, 9714,
Mhm.
which is 9716 is completely different. There's a longer zone on that anymore either. Somebody else has purchased that, so that's why
okay,
but yeah, we can.
that's fine. And the plots and stuff aren't based off of addresses. So
The ordinance is though.
Do I need to remove that address from my motion, or we're okay?
I don't, because we called Butler County to make sure we had an address for that lot, because that whole big parcel was 9718. And so they each need now 2 separate addresses. And so that's the information that we got from the county.
Is it the right?
I don't know without calling the county.
So do we need to hold off then?
I would not.
There's another house.
Matt, you got to go there.
Sorry.
Yes.
There's another house in the back that gets mail for 9716 already.
I just
So-
want to make sure, Matt, that we're getting the right address
Sure.
for you guys and stuff, because we don't want to prove something and then we didn't take care of it.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to clarify, Kip.
Specific to the lot.
It's just a general.
So I don't think it's a substantive deal. As long as we all know what property we're talking about, we can just approve it to be as the lot 1 or whatever you guys want to call it, owned by these folks with an address to be determined later.
Okay.
I'll amend my motion to be lot 1, to change it from commercial, general commercial to rural route residential district.
Second.
Okay, hold on.
We have a motion and a second, but we're going to pause for.
Who made the motion?
Kip,
Okay, and then how did you change what the motion was?
I took out the
I took
property
the
address.
address out and just made it.
So-
at number
So
1.
there was a lot of conversations going on, so everybody may not have heard. So just ask the city attorney if the address issue is actually substantive to this, because if it's not a substantive matter, then we can verify with the county and get that address correct. The understanding is that the zoning change is occurring for that lot 1, whatever its address is. And so your action, therefore, as we understand it, is the zoning change on that lot. And then we will go back with the county and verify for sure which address they have for that lot, and then amend or we'll make that edit on the ordinance language if we have to. So that was the discussion that just happened.
So on the motion itself, should we say
Address and then general.
completely?
Well,
I can
one
rephrase it.
suggestion might be approval of ordinance 2242, changing the zoning district classification with property address to be verified by the county. Would that be for lot 1 with property address to be verified by the county? Is that- is
I'll
that
amend it
passable?
by what you said, with what you said.
Second.
Are you sure?
We're
We're going to get this done tonight. We're going to get it done. We're going to get it done.
We've had 3 motions. We've had 3 motions. So.
Because we were creating a new lot, so.
The first 2 motions were withdrawn.
Who was the
so-
second?
On that one, it was Shane.
Okay,
I second.
and then I will read it back to you. So.
Josh, is that picture that you had there just a minute ago from the county or the map? Was that the 2 lots together or just 1 lot? I couldn't,
Which picture are you referring to?
what?
Which picture are you
The
referring to?
one you just took down, the
It was a
one
bit of
right
an L
before
shape.
this. It was showing
This
Yeah.
is the existing map. This is not the plat that you're considering tonight. This is how Integrity and Butler County.
I understand that. Is that the one property that's in the blue line there?
Mhm.
That's lot 2.
This is that big orange hash property that
Got it.
is being,
Yeah. It's just looking at that other picture, I was trying to put it to what we're talking about, you know?
so this is Butler County and the city's GIS system right now. This, what I have highlighted, I believe, is the big orange hash mark you saw on that fixed picture. And a part of this is being modified, and then you're getting lot 1 out of this, and then this
So
parcel
that's
over
what we were looking
here.
at prior, that one there.
Yes, it's this is that area, but these
it's
lines
bigger.
that you're seeing here are existing. They're
I
not
was
the
just trying
plat
to
that you're looking
find
at.
it on the map. That's good. Thank you.
Would you like me to read what I have? Okay.
Yeah.
Richardson made a motion to approve ordinance number 2242, changing the zoning district zoning for Lot 1 with a property address to be verified by Butler County from C3 General Commercial to RR Rural Residential District as recommended by the Augusta Planning Commission, and Scott seconded the motion.
Correct.
With that, I will do the roll call.
Tim, or Anthony.
We've got a question at the
Hang
back
on.
of the room.
Let's go to the bathroom.
Tim Johnson, Public Utilities Director, and in another life, a city planner. I would suggest that the legal description as put forth in the ordinance be what you use in your motion, which is Lot 1, Block 1, Redbird Meadows Edition, Butler County, Kansas. That will preclude any confusion, legal or otherwise, forever into the future. It won't matter what address goes on it.
Can you say it again? Lot 1.
Block 1.
Lot
what's in
1,
there.
Block 1, Redbird Meadows Edition, Butler County, Kansas.
So do you want to amend that motion, Mr. Richardson?
For number 16, yes.
That's what I've got in there.
Thank you. Lot
So-
1, Block 1.
Yes.
I'll second that
Redbird Meadows
amended
Edition.
motion.
Okay. Are you ready for roll call?
Let's give it a whirl.
Okay. Martin. Martin.
Oh, yes, sorry.
That's okay. Burke.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Marr.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Right.
It's going to be great.
Okay, we're going to move down to item number 4 on our business. Lease
Thank
of the
you.
north hangar of the Augusta Municipal Airport. We'll turn it over to the staff.
Yes, Mayor and Council, we do have our airport manager, Randy, here, so I'm going to go ahead and invite him up. And while he's walking up, just going to show you the aerial so you know what area that we're talking. Oh, goodness gracious. Whew. I think the drone got hacked. The building that's under discussion tonight is this north hangar that was previously occupied by Schreiber Air. If you remember, we recently did a new lease for the company that had purchased that building, purchased the company from Schreiber and is now expanding into their new space, and so that freed up additional space at our airport. And so I'm going to turn it over to our airport manager, kind of walk you through the process that was done to arrive at this recommendation here tonight. And what you are considering is a new lease for a new business opportunity at the airport. So with that, Randy.
And Randy, Net Airport Manager. I did include most of what I'm going to talk about in your packet, so kind of give a brief description along with a PowerPoint that kind of goes down into the financial details a little bit more. Our last lease kind of wanted us to put some different things in play here, so I think we've covered our bases a little bit better with this lease of the North Hangar. To start with, we did advertise both on the city website. I did send out a message to all the tenants and then other folks that had been interested in the previous property. as well as a listing in, I think it's barnstormers.com, which is kind of like an aviation classified website. Didn't get anything from any of those, but we ended up with 3 potential applicants, 2 flight schools, Joe Bravo Aviation and Aviation Academy out of Wichita. And then the new, I guess the new folks that you hadn't heard about is a group called King Air 3AU. 3AU is actually the identifier for the Augusta Airport. They own a King Air F90, and you'll see a little bit more about their selection here in a second. The selection, tried to keep it very, very, I'll call it common ground for all 3 applicants. We met with all 3 applicants, and by meeting, we had our Shane Scott, of course, your council member, as well as an airport advisory member to give us that viewpoint. Cammie and myself met with all 3 applicants. We used a standard set of questions. Most of them were kind of what would you're doing with the building? How does this contribute to the city's vision of the airport? Out of that, we ended up selecting King Air 3AU, which is owned by a gentleman named Tad Fugate out of Wichita. Again, they currently lease space in our community hangar. As you go down through the analysis, in all 3 applicants we felt were solid, but in terms of what this group contributes, one of the biggest ones was what they're going to do that hangar. So right now, the King Air that they have, the hangar door I think is roughly 14 feet tall. Their tail of their plane is 15 feet, so we have a slight problem there. So they're going through and going to put a new door on that hangar, as well as widening the hangar. And you can read down a little bit more. Not only are they going to use it for their aircraft, they're going to start some aircraft sales. So buying and selling of airplanes. In fact, their first airplane should be here this week. And they're also going to do some aircraft management. Tad is a fairly well-known fella in Wichita. His son owns a part interest of an airplane. His brother owns airplanes. So they're looking at bringing some other larger aircraft onto our field as well. But the door itself is going to be a new door. I think it's right now it's 16 feet tall. The hangar width is 50 feet. To some of the airplanes they want to do are larger jets. So they are also looking at widening that door. The facility itself will be completely repainted on the outside. There's going to be some offices that are in that building right now. That's kind of a strange hangar. It looks like a big building, but there is a lot of office space in that hangar. And they want airplanes, not offices. So they are going to tear some of these offices out. I'll come back to the last thing here in a second. At their own expense, they're also going to seal and stripe the parking lot that's to the south of there. And they're finally going to refinish the floor. And the best way to describe it, the quality of what we're dealing with here is, as Tad says it, they want to be able to eat off that hangar floor. So they're a really a well-run company, and if you've seen their airplane or been up close to it, it's a very nice airplane. So that's what we're recommending. We did have to do a little bit of concessions, and let me go back a step. So the previous lease, we took and looked at the lease that had been done, and it was, I'll call it not real profitable for the city. They weren't charging much rent. There is some property tax on that building that we pay, I think, to the tune of $5,500 a year. There was a lease study done in January of 2024. We went with that lease, with that study, and we went actually to the higher end of that lease study. Financially, it means that there'll be a profitable hangar. We did do some concessions. I think somewhere down the line, Josh, we've got yes. So the first year we did a 33% concession for the build that they're doing. And to kind of put that in perspective, I had went out and got some quotes for a hangar door. They're going to put in a slightly different door, a little cheaper door. But the initial quotes I got for the hangar door, the widening of the door, the engineering work that was going to take place was $250,000. So our concessions, even though it's quite a bit in terms of initial rent for that first year of 33%, the big picture is the city is going to have a very nice hangar, at the expense of TAD and their group there. The next year we went with a 10% reduction, and after that, it just follows in with a 2% rate increase based on that lease study. So if you look at the very first year net revenues, we're only getting $12,000 out of that after we pay our property tax and kind of build in a little for building repairs. But if you compare that to the first or the last year of the old lease, I think the city profited $8,600. And somewhere, I don't know the history here, Josh, but there was also a considerable expense for an air conditioning unit that was put in not too long ago up in there. So
Yeah, so this is your first. There's a lot of complex history on that building. This is actually your first new tenant and lease that any of us have really been a part of. All of the past conditions were either originally negotiated all the way back in the early 1990s, and we've been writing it out to the end, or were concessions that council had made to clean up problems that were in that lease from the 1990s. So the lease rates that you see up here, this top table, was actually a negotiated deal that you had with the previous tenant because there was a dispute over the language in the lease about the ownership of the actual building. In order to resolve that dispute and make it clear that the city is the owner of the building, you gave a multi-year extension, had different terms with some concessions regarding the rental rates, and that's why you ended up with what you had. Is you had essentially a 4-year temporary lease to solve that question of who owns the building. So the city owns the building. That temporary 4-year conditional lease that you had in place originally with Schreiber, and then subsequently with Tim, who bought out Schreiber's company, has now expired. And this is your first chance at actually leasing out that facility as clear owner with that issue settled. So that was some of the background that maybe you didn't want that information, but it's useful to know where some of these terms and conditions came from. They were a negotiated deal in order to settle a dispute.
And real quickly on that year one negotiation or that concession for year one, that matched the lease that you approved for Kansas Coppers as well, a 33% concession for the work that Tim did on the north offices in that building. So that's where we came up with that number. The 10% is new, but it was just for the vast amount of work that they're going to do to that building for themselves and of course the city.
And what Randy is referencing, if you recall, one of the things that we've recommended with our newer leases is essentially that you just follow the FAA's recommended procedure. And in 2024, we did actual appraisals on that property that determines market rates. So our rental structures are based off those market rates. And then the only context added is us looking at the value that they are putting back into that hangar by virtue of the repairs and improvements they're making. And we're providing small concessions on the rental side. And then the lease returns to the market rates that were recommended from those appraisals. So that's a different process because I would say that leases from the 80s, from the 90s, I don't know where the pricing structures came from, but on this particular hangar, you were getting, I think, $1,200 a year for 30 years. So something in that vein. And there were multiple repairs or expenses that we made, whether it was to a lift station, I can't remember if we did anything with pavement, but I know we fixed something related to the septic tank and it cost us $8,000. It cost us 15 years of a lease or 10 years of a lease just to do a repair for them. So this is a much better situation than we've had in the past.
My only regret about the whole process is we don't have 3 hangars for all 3 of the folks because all of them could contribute to the airport. It's just, right now, we kind of feel that this group, the King Air 3AU group is, and it was unanimous. Shane and Cam and I all agreed that they seem to be the best fit for the direction we want the airport to go.
Randy, can you explain the different type of fuel that they use and the profit margin in that fuel, and give us a guess about how much you think they might use in fuel? Because that's where we get a lot of our money.
Sure. So the airport is kind of on a heavy fixed, I'll call it revenue base, and the variable races are fuel. And we sell 3 different types of fuel there. Jet A, we sell 100 low lead, which is our biggest, I guess our biggest sale. You know, the 70 tenants in the southern hangars there use the 100 low lead, or the Mo gas, which is another what we sell. The jet is quite a bit more profitable than what we see with in terms of the 100 low lead. And I don't know, do I need to go into the specifics about our profits?
Maybe not.
It's more profitable. I'll just leave it at that. The nice thing about the airplanes that we're talking about, or they're talking about bringing into that hangar, a 172 is an example, a very common airplane. You'll see them flying all over when you're driving down the road, burns about 8 gallons an hour. The King Air that they're operating burns 80 gallons an hour of more profitable fuel. And they are the ones that are going to, with their connections, bring in more of those type of airplanes. So long-term revenue, they've already, they moved in November. I think we've sold 6,000 gallons of jet fuel just to that one King Air. So this Friday we'll sell 300 gallons. So it's a very, that's kind of what's going to drive our profits at that airport is getting those type of aircraft out on our field.
Thank you.
Yep.
Maybe I missed it. What's the term of this lease?
5 years is what it says in there.
Yeah,
I
it's
saw
5
the
years.
5, but I didn't know if that was more.
I think it's 5 years and then 3-year renewals.
Okay. Thank
That
you.
was the question I had on just the wording. I think the term section may be a bit unclear in the sense that it says 5 years commencing, and it gives the dates, and it'll be renewed in 3-year agreements following the initial term at each 3-year point past the original 5-year term, and thereafter both the city and the lessee will assess and agree to new terms proposed. So first question is, it says it will be versus may be. So it's got built-in language that makes it an automatic renewal versus there's no window for the city or the lessee at that point to say, I guess, unless it's just a standard notice within the other terms of the contract. So there is that element. And then just it'll be renewed in 3-year agreements at each 3-year point past the original 5-year term, and thereafter they'll be able to assess new terms. So it tells me that at the 5-year mark, there's not an opportunity to assess new terms. It's after the first 3-year mark is when it can assess new terms. Just the way it's written.
I'm going to defer to Andrew on this
No,
one.
you're, I just,
So it's the same lease agreement we used for the other hangar
Yes.
just
Yeah.
a couple months ago.
it's not an objection. It's just a question for clarity.
Understood.
It's a good point.
I mean, if the council wants to make those changes, I don't really disagree that it might be a good idea to clarify, take out the will, make clear that it's not past the 3-point, but before each renewal term.
Mhm. Just for clarity purposes.
Something to approve with language.
Mhm. 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 Mr. Mayor, I don't have any other questions.
I'm waiting for the city manager to think this through. Always hate renegotiating leases on the
Yeah.
fly.
Yeah.
I've asked the city attorney if we can provide some clarifying language, so we'll see if we can wordsmith this out.
changing, with removing the word.
I would say may be renewed in may be renewed for subsequent 3-year terms following the initial term. At the end of the original term, each 3-year term, both the city of Augusta, etc.
Ask you this, Andrew, on the final sentence, would it be easier if we just took out any reference to time and essentially just said that at each renewal, for each renewal term, the city of Augusta and lessee will assess the terms essentially. So not a period of time, but just say at each renewal.
I would say assess.
Very good.
Each 3-year. I'll say like following each renewal. Or something like that. So normally we'll have like a 60-day or a 30-day.
Stirring up trouble, Jake.
So there's a couple of different ways to do this, council. So we could either try to wordsmith it tonight, or if you feel like staff has a clear understanding of your concern and you want that clarity, then you could approve the lease subject to revisions to this paragraph as recommended by the city attorney. And then we can clear up that wordsmithing just on the term part rather than sit here and try to do it tonight.
So moved.
Thank you.
So it was subject to the term section.
So if discussion is over, is there any other discussion before we move on to that? Okay. So the motion, I believe, would be to, if you're approving, the motion would be to approve the lease subject to section 4 sorry, I had it a second ago. Motion would be to approve the lease subject to section 4 being revised by the city attorney. So,
Yes, so moved.
yes.
I get a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Does everybody understand? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Who made the second?
Sean.
Okay.
So what we'll do then is you've essentially given the city attorney the authority to clarify that section, so it won't have to come back for further action. But once we do, we'll send the language to you so you have the updated version of the lease with that language clarified.
Perfect. Randy, it's
Thank you.
exciting.
It is.
Thanks,
It's
Randy.
it's good stuff.
Thank you.
It's a lot of Saturday and Sunday fuelings, but I'm happy to do it. So.
That's awesome.
Am I up next or do I go back? Then? Okay.
Hey,
Randy, one
hey,
question.
Randy, I just wanted, while you're still here, one of the doctors my wife works with,
Mhm.
was commenting on how good their airport's looking and how great it is to fly in there. So,
Good.
Good job.
Yeah, it's a, well, I'm going to tell you, I was out on the new moor that you approved today, so I love it. So it's a labor of love out there right now. So there's 3 of us doing it though, so we like it. So
Awesome.
it's going good.
Awesome. Okay, item 5, nuisance abatement resolution for 310 East Clark. Staff?
Yes, Mayor and Council, we have a nuisance abatement resolution coming to you. We have our code enforcement officer, Tanner, here to speak to this item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is 310 East Clark. I noticed this initially back in November. I did have contact with the residents over telephone. They did make an attempt to clean some stuff up. It was looking better, but now it's just gotten worse. So as of March 24th, I tried to reach out to them again via telephone and just kind of describe the issues they were having and that it would be coming to council and needed to be cleaned up. I have not received a call back from either one of the owners. Certified mail was sent to them on March 24th and they signed for it on March 27th. So they have gotten my nuisance letter. But as you can see in the pictures, there's several large appliances, just a lot of stuff. The vehicle is currently illegally parked per our zoning regs. In my opinion, once we get all this stuff cleaned up, they should be able to park, within reason on their driveway. So I'm not really worried about that right now. It's more just the nuisance abatement with the appliances and stuff that they have in the front yard. As you can see on that picture, the porch is also pretty heavily filled with just boxes and stuff of that nature. But if this is to pass, this will start the 10-day clock. I'll send them the resolution. During that 10-day period, I'll seek bids from junk removal companies to see prices to remove this stuff from their front yard, and we will go from there.
Tanner, in your conversations with them previously, I know they haven't responded recently, but previously when they did engage, have they given you any perspective or information as to maybe why?
So it's my understanding they used to clean out apartment buildings, I believe, here in town. I'm under the impression that's no longer the case, so I'm not sure as of right now. I mean, it's one of the properties I drive by pretty frequently. They can't come or go from their house is the way it sits. I mean, those 2 vehicles that are there, the truck in the yard has a flat tire. It's been that way for several weeks, and the other truck that's in the driveway is blocked in by stuff. So I'm not sure what the current situation is. Like I said, I haven't been able to reach them via phone in the past couple of months.
And Cammie or Tanner, from history, I know there's a tracking. Do we know how many other instances this has been visited by our code enforcement?
So I know of one other instance. This was several years ago. I believe it was 2018 that it came to council, and there was, a lot of stuff. It was it looked similar to how it looks now. I mean, I think it's just kind of a revolving door. When I talked to them in November, they had tables set up out there. So I believe they had a yard sale and some stuff was clear. The truck and trailer weren't in the drive in the yard at that point. So it was looking a little better as far as, years of history. I'm not quite sure.
Do we know if that earlier effort resulted in them cleaning it up or the city?
I don't believe the city abated it from
Okay.
my notes.
I'll make a motion if there's no other conversation. Okay. Make a motion to approve resolution number 2025-05, determining that a nuisance exists at 310 East Clark Avenue and ordering the removal and abatement of nuisances within 10 days as specified in KSA 12-1617E.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Tanner.
So if I can add a comment real quick, I was just looking in our files. I know that would have been before we moved to the new system. But when I look in our historical files. We don't have that address as a file, so that would indicate to me there haven't been any building permits or any code enforcement, like official kind of documentation that was really saved in the past. That makes sense. So it may have been visited, but there wasn't like an official action taken on the property, I would assume. We don't have a file.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Proposal from Gilmore and Bell for disclosure compliance services. Item number 6. Staff.
And Mayor Council, this agreement has been approved by the councils going back to September of 2014 at the recommendation of the city's financial advisor at the time, Dustin Avey, which he's still our advisor. He communicated the importance of complying with the continuing disclosure requirements regarding outstanding bonds, and specifically the annual filings and what could happen if we didn't do that and didn't file the proper paperwork. And so this agreement, as part of this disclosure compliance services, Gilmore and Bell will review our disclosure agreements to determine what information is required to be disclosed, provide us with annual reminders and filing dates. Annually, they provide a list of material events requiring additional disclosure. They draft our annual report for us and assist with its updating of the information. And then they submit the annual report to the MSRB and provide the city with confirmation that it's been submitted. This contract does allow for termination at any time within 30 days. And the annual fee is $1,750 to be paid out of electric administration, other services. This is a 5-year agreement, so that rate is good for each of the 5 years. And it's been easy to deal with them, and they're very helpful in this process. And I think it's very essential to the city that we have these kind of services available to us. So based on that, I would recommend approval of this proposal, and I open for any questions.
Council.
I make a motion to approve the proposal from Gilmore and Bell, PC, authorizing them to assist the city in meeting our continuing disclosure obligations for $1,750 per year for 5 years, beginning with the city's fiscal year ended December 31, 2024, and authorizing City Manager Josh Shaw to sign the engagement letter.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. 2025 Pavement Preservation Program. Staff.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this item here tonight is actually for the award of pavement repairs pursuant to our pavement preservation planning that we have been doing for a number of years now. If you want to go back about 10 years ago, we implemented a whole new strategy for how we would finance street repairs. And the goal was to, one, stretch our dollars further, but two, just maximize efficiencies in the way that we did our streets. And the last few years, by virtue of the I'm going to say the overperformance of our sales tax, we've actually had more revenues and been able to do more street packages than was ever conceived in that original plan. And so our staff have done quite a few experiments over the years. And the last few packages that we have done, the emphasis has been on the preservation side of things, essentially taking assets that you have already built, investing back into them to extend their useful life. So it's a way of stretching your money further. And so staff put together this new package. I'm going to turn it over to them to describe the process they use, the package that we're looking at. And I believe in this case, we actually had a new situation that came up with a second bidder that we have not had in the past. So there's some context to fill you in on there and a recommendation for you to consider tonight.
Yeah, so like
introduce yourself.
I'm Anthony, City of Augusta Street Division Superintendent. So yeah, like Josh said, we've been doing this for a few years now. We've been bringing it to you. We've been progressing each and every year, bringing in different types of treatments, trying to extend the life of the the pavement, and keep it useful or in good condition. In 2023, it was a fairly basic program where we were doing asphalt repair and just putting microsurfacing down. In 2024, we introduced a chip seal, and then covered that with microsurface. In 2025, what we have proposed is actually adding chip seal without the microsurface cover. We want to keep an eye on those things and see how they perform. And we'll be looking at some things in 26. If they perform right, we've kind of got some ideas for 26. This year we did get a second bid from Pavement Pros or Pavement Management LLC. Had never heard of the company. Reached out to our engineers. They had never heard of them. Kind of gave us some pause. Started doing some research. We were skeptical, but we went up to Kansas City. They're based out of Kansas City. Went up, looked at some of their work, spoke to the vice president, reached out to other cities. We had to ask him for a list of references. On that list of references was cities like Tonganoxie and Topeka. Those were probably his two worst references. But what they did say was he stood behind his product, and he made everything right. They had some hiccups, but he did what he needed to do. He's based out of Lee Summit. This will be the furthest he's traveled for a job, so we're concerned about that. And he's using a subcontractor that we haven't heard of either. So we're concerned, but we feel like we need to give him a shot. The products that we did go look at, they did look very, very good. And some of the people that we spoke to about him, was positive. So if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Anthony, now, didn't you indicate that they have quite a bit of overlap in some ways with the other company that has been doing this with us for a few years? Can you explain that?
So Vance Brothers is the one that usually gets this contract. So they actually have to buy their oil that they use from Vance Brothers. And the rock that they are going to use, the aggregate they use for their material, they buy it from the same place. They are a smaller company. Vance will shoot to do 10,000, 15,000 square yards a day. They'll bring in 3-4 crews, and they'll just get with it. Their plan is to come in with one crew. They'll shoot to do, 5,000 square yards a day. They think that by keeping their crews smaller, they'll disrupt less of the city at one time. That may be true, but they're going to be disrupting the city for a longer period of time. They've worked with Vance. In fact, in Topeka, they bid against Vance and lost to Vance, and they admitted they bid it off a little bit more than they could chew there. They ended up having to call Vance in to help them out. So, but the guy in Topeka said he did what he had to do. They didn't change their bid, and they got the project done on time.
Be honest, Anthony, you're not giving me a warm fuzzy here.
I don't have the warm fuzzy.
So I sensed that there was not a warm fuzzy. So from that vantage point, you said you felt compelled to give them a shot, and I'm looking at the cost estimates, and the cost estimate is $17,000 difference between the two companies. So what compels you to feel like it's the right thing take all the risks that you lined up so nicely for us.
Yes. So to me, we're always going to have these problems and these concerns of dealing with a new contractor. And for me and for you guys, all we can think of is North Ohio.
That's exactly what I'm thinking.
It's exactly where my mind went, and I understand we can't hold every contractor to that same standard. Again, I've spoke to the two cities who had some issues, and those cities said the guy did what he needed to do. He stood behind his product. He came in. And for him, this is a new market. He's wanting to push into this market. He wants to come down here. He wants Andover. He wants Winfield. He wants El Dorado. That's what he's trying to get into. He's trying to expand a little bit. It wouldn't do him any good to come in here and make a bad name for himself. The other part of this is, for me, and this is your call, if we don't take this bid and give them the shot, we may not get another bid. It may just be Vance Brothers from here on out. And, you know, if we want to have competitive bids, I know that there's another company local that's been trying to get into the market. They can't get into the market right now because they just can't keep their people. If we don't take the chance, you know, what's it going to do for us in the future for bidding purposes? I know that I've stood up here before and we've only gotten one bid for a few years, and it's always, well, hey, is there anybody else interested? And there wasn't. So,
Anthony, you're in a tough situation with making that decision. I get it. One of my pet peeves is us doing a project and then have to redo it again. You know, that just bugs me. And that's my only fear on this, you know. But if he's going to step up and take care of it without any further cost to us, that's a different story.
that's what's been indicated for me from other cities. Again, I call upon Tonganoxie and Topeka because those were the two cities that we spoke to that had issues. We spoke to several other cities, Grandview, Missouri. There were several of them in Missouri. They think he's great. He works for a lot of HOAs. He's done a lot of things there. We've gone up and looked at his product. He showed us several different types of product that we may look at in the future. He's been in the business he's owned this business for 13 years. He's been in the business for 30. He was part of another split from Ritchie Brothers, I think, from way back. And so he's just trying to build his business. Any other questions?
So Anthony, we're basically would save 16,000.
Yep.
But we're kind of rolling the dice.
Yep.
There's where I like saving the $16,000, but I'm a little concerned. You know, once somebody gets something completed, then you got to get them back here.
In the documents, it does say it carries a 2-year warranty. I understand. Still have to get them back here to warranty the stuff.
Gentlemen,
I'm just here to give you the information.
Did they do that without threat?
Yeah, like I said, Topeka and both Tonganoxie said he stood behind his product. He came back in. He made it right. He actually milled off a road in Tonganoxie to try to clean up that mess and come back in and relaid everything, which is above and beyond what I would think that you would need to do for the mistake that needed to be
Well,
or
and,
the mistake that happened.
Anthony, to be fair, I mean, no contractor we've ever had has been perfect, and you guys have to navigate the project with Vance as well. They
I mean,
just happen to
did
be
we
there
have
over-
issues with Vance Brothers? too?
Oh, yeah. So, I think Mike had brought up several issues about a seam or things like that. We've always had some issues. Vance always came back in and fixed it. It may be 3-4 months down the road, but we would have a punch list of everything that needed to happen, and then they would circle back through.
Anthony, I trust you to hold him accountable, so
We will have eagle eyes on this one,
I know you will.
just for our own assurances.
Yeah, what I would say, council, it is a risk question. So that's all your choice is based on. You do have the chance to save the money. They're bidding on the same project as everyone else. There's some overlap in the product, so really you're paying for one to be the applicator compared to the other. And is that worth its savings? I would say that in the grand scheme of things, it is a preservation project. So you're talking about surface type treatments. It's not tearing out a roadway and then relaying a roadway. This is essentially surface work. So maybe the level of risk is not as great as if you were doing a more in-depth project. And I do appreciate the situation that Anthony is in, trying to recommend to you guys the best option, and you're weighing different values. And in this case, you have a chance of dealing with a known commodity, which is the vendor that you've used for 4 years, or the unknown commodity, which may end up being cheaper and could be the vendor that you use for the next 4 years. You don't know. And his underlying point is we'll never know that unless you try them, because we have not been able to get multiple vendors bidding on this in the past. So that's the situation. You are well within your right to make a recommendation either way, or to make a vote either way. In this case, staff is trying to lay out our particular questions or concerns. They went out of their way. You said you actually drove to Kansas City in this case to physically look at their product, and you talked to their cities. And so we tried to do our due diligence. It doesn't guarantee anything in the long run, but that's the situation that you're looking at. It is just a risk question, and you have known versus unknown.
I think as a general statement, our trust is in Anthony's and Anthony's recommendation. And so from that vantage point, that's where my inclination is.
Mine as well. It's on your shoulders, brother.
Great.
Move for the approval of a bid from Pavement Management LLC in the amount of $299,979.40 for the construction of the 2025 Pavement Preservation Program.
Second. Got a motion with multiple seconds. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks for all your hard work.
Okay, item 8, mayoral appointments to the Airport Advisory Board. Turn it over to staff.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, this item is pretty self-explanatory. You do have a couple of openings on the Airport Advisory Board, and so there has been a few names that have been suggested and expressed an interest, and they are presented in the staff report for your consideration.
And I have discussed this with Cammie. I failed to get a hold of Randy. Went by the airport and he was busy. So.
Your recommendations?
Yeah, these are my recommendations.
Make a motion to approve the mayor's recommendations to the Airport Advisory Board.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve these. Harry Littleton and Taylor Spangler. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 9, Community Improvement Fund Policy. Staff.
Yes, Mayor and Council, if you remember back several meetings, you had an action item that was coming to you from the API group, but they've essentially created the new community foundation. And one of the ideas for the community foundation was for there to be a community improvement fund. And this is a way of kind of coming out of our experience with the Castle Park build. The idea was, can we create tools and mechanisms for people to contribute to and donate to help get these projects done? In that Castle Park example, they weren't able to lean on a local nonprofit the way they were when the original playground was built 20 years ago. And so they had to create a mechanism and find a way to collect those donations and to give people the benefit for taxing purposes when they make their donation to the project. So the community foundation has been formed. You approved a resolution to essentially create that community improvement fund, but as part of your approval, you made it contingent on policies and procedures, essentially the internal controls and process for how would projects be selected, exactly what does that look like, how does it fit within our budget context. And so in the last few weeks since that meeting, staff has been doing research both with the community foundation and just generally trying to find different examples, ideas, thinking through our own internal procedures, and have come up with a policy for your review tonight. And what I would say, I'm going to have Shauna pick up the conversation because she was doing the specific work with the community foundation and share some of the ideas and guidance that they had, but at least conceptually, the process that we envision is you have to have a way of starting with project ideas. How do projects come about? How do they get proposed? And then once they're proposed, what happens from there? So where we started with process was creating a project form that anyone in the community, the council, staff, the ideas for projects can come from anywhere. That way, no one is a gatekeeper in how the ideas come about. But the form gives you something like your event form does, where you get details, you get information. What is the project? What's the estimated budget cost? Who's involved? Those sort of things. And so that was where we decided to start, is let's standardize at least the idea submission part of this process. And so there's a form for you to consider, and anybody can make their suggestion. And then following the form being submitted, there will be a staff level review, and we're going to be looking at the project to verify budget numbers, to provide estimates on in some cases you may have ongoing costs. Not every project is discrete. You have ongoing obligations. So the Castle Park, as an example, is we have to maintain that. It's not simply the fundraising to build it. We have to take care of it over time. So the staff section of the form is for us to do a review, to check and see if the project is compliant with our plans, to check and see if it's compliant with the mission, vision, values as the council and the staff have adopted for the organization, to review the cost, and to look at any of those long-term considerations to see, are you obligating your something that goes beyond an initial budget year. So that review will still all go on this one form. And in the end, when staff submits staff reports to you in this setting, that form will be your information piece. That's essentially your staff report on a project. Okay. The second thing we looked at is, okay, once a review is done, then what happens? And my thought was that you should probably look at it as a decision tree. And when you have projects that are small enough, it's probably not something that you want to spend time on as council and go through a big lengthy process for. So as an example, I would say if somebody wants to donate a bench, It's a standard bench that we have on our trails and in our parks everywhere, and it's $600 or $900 or something. All of this process to have to bring back to you for that level of approval seems kind of silly. So the recommendation was for you to come up with some kind of threshold of a project size that you were comfortable with being resolved at a staff administrative level, and then a threshold that beyond that would require council action. And I believe in the policy, now you can change and put in whatever number you want, but in the policy, I believe the number that we established was 10,000. That's the threshold that you've established for me on change orders. It's not really spelled out anywhere else in any of our other policies or practices, but that's a number that you set out for city manager to handle at a change order level. For example, people want to donate benches or a picnic table. A single one of those could be $1,500 or $2,000. The downtown speakers, all said and done, I think ended up being like 25 to 28,000. So that project would have exceeded that threshold. It would have been too big, would have to come back to council. I can't think of every example of projects that we've had over the years, but I think it makes sense to me for you to set a threshold where below a certain level, we don't go through all these layers. You just let it happen administratively. So that's where I would say is a discussion point for you to decide what that level might be. And then beyond that, once you have your approvals, you have the submission, you have the approvals, the acceptance of the project, then all of this information gets submitted to the Community Foundations Board, because ultimately they have to make the request for a distribution from the fund. So that was one of the things that we verified, because I believe there was a question of, who gets to decide the projects. Shauna, when you spoke with the bigger community foundation, they'd indicated that their suggestion and their preference was that we work collectively with the community foundation group and board in selecting the projects. In this case,
Right.
You're essentially selecting and accepting the projects and then submitting it to them, and they have a chance to agree or not. Technically, I don't expect that you'll have a lot of disagreement on those things, but that potential exists. But ultimately, they're the ones that have to make the request for distribution. So we will have to be a partner with them, and they will have to handle that piece of it. Am I missing anything there? That was the clarification we specifically asked for, is who asked for the distribution. Am I explaining it right?
Right. So I spoke with Angie, who is at the Central Kansas Community Foundation. And I think she was surprised at the level of detail we were putting into our policy. I think maybe with other entities she works with that aren't municipalities, the groups, the Community Foundation and the other groups are just really in communication and working together on what projects they want to do from the get-go. So I think she thought it was a little bit odd that we were coming up with such a detailed policy, but she signed off on it. And like Josh said, whatever we decide on a project, whether it's if the city manager approves a smaller project or the council approves a larger project, then we present that to the Augusta Community Foundation Board, and then they'll consider it, they approve it, then they submit their minutes of their meeting where they approve it with or to the Central Kansas Community Foundation, and then the Community Foundation would issue us a check. So she said if it was a smaller project, it might just, if she made it sound like a sense of urgency, like if there was a small project and we were in a hurry to get it done, she said that, we might not necessarily have to go through all the steps, or, I don't know. I think she was just surprised at the level of detail, but she did agree. She did look over the policy and she approved of it and she didn't have any problems with it.
So I'll just walk you through real quick. Submission form, idea from anyone. The other requirement is where can projects be done? So the location eligibility we establish as the city limits of the city of Augusta, which includes Augusta Municipal Airport and Santa Fe Lake, or on property owned by the city of Augusta. So as long as the city of Augusta owns it or it's within the city limits, you can essentially do a project with that funding. The evaluation criteria, this does not cover everything that you guys may want to possibly establish, but first, the mission, vision, values. Does the project comply with those as we have them adopted? Does it comply with our planning documents? So that could be the zoning regs, could be a parks master plan, our code of ordinances and adopted regulations. So basic, does it comply with that? Is it not incongruence, not the word, non-conforming, maybe is the word I'm looking for in a zoning context. Look at the cost of the project, feasibility, and then some of the long-term questions and consideration. I think that the important thing is that you don't have to accept every project that someone wants to donate to the city. If I want to put a gold bust of myself on downtown State Street, and I'm willing to give you $20,000 to put my statue up, you don't have to take that. So this creates some sort of process where you have a review and can actually evaluate that project and decide if it complies with all of these things. We have a project approval. If it's less than $10,000 right now, you can change that number. That can be handled administratively by the city manager. If it exceeds that, then it's a council approval. And then it spells out once you have approval at one of those levels, then it goes to the ACF board so that they can do their review, their vote, put it in the minutes, and then submit the distribution request.
Right. And if they approve of it and the funds are available, then they can just issue a check. The Central Kansas Community Foundation can issue a check to the city. If they approved the project, theoretically, the idea of the project, but they didn't have enough money in that fund, then their board could decide whether they want to fundraise. And then they would do that fundraising on their own until there was enough money for that project.
And so that's the important thing to remember is you can have a couple of different ways of projects occurring under this. You could have someone with a very specific idea donating money to have that idea fulfilled, or you could have the fund just generally accepting donations for that broad category of community improvements that you approved in that resolution. So if it's something like that, then people could be sending money over time, the balances are building, but you may have a project that has a cost level and not enough money in the fund yet. So you have to do additional fundraising. You can still accept the project and say, yes, we're committed to it, but then you work with the community foundation that says, this is what we want to fundraise for. So that's where some of that interaction can happen, is the very specific project identified or the general donation to the community improvements, and then all of this other process plays out. If it's a small enough project, a lot of times I think to avoid complication, we can probably just absorb within our budgets. There's not normally a lot of cost. Like, let's say if you're putting in a bench, there's no cost to us per se from the donation, but let's say we have to pour a concrete pad for it. We can probably just absorb that within our existing budget without having to have other layers of approval. If you're going to have a project that you have to fundraise for years or is expensive enough, in that case, we may suggest setting it up the way that we do with our federal grants, where we set up a separate project fund so you don't have monies intermingling. Or you could have a project that maybe you can't build all at once, that's done in phases. but you're spending over time. So that way, having a separate project fund, you can actually keep track of those monies in a very transparent way and make sure that that doesn't get mixed in with other things. So again, I think that the way that we manage it on the budget side of things will depend on how big the project is. And so the policy just conceives of that spectrum of possibilities, but doesn't pigeonhole us into one specific way of dealing with it in the budget document.
So, Josh, just for a second. That portion where you were talking about, that was just a little bit confusing. You can slide back to that, because talking about, because if it's a project, because this is in the community fund thing, if they're doing a small project, I mean, that makes it sound like if somebody picks a project, we could just pay for it out of our funds rather than using community funds, or take it to the community fund. By saying small project approved at administrative level, maybe managed through the city's regular budget.
Yeah.
That
So
almost sounds like we can just decide to go ahead and pay for it out of our
yeah.
budget.
So the simplest example I can come up with is that bench example. So depending on, let's say someone is making a donation, depending on how much they're donating, maybe they only donate enough to buy the bench. We don't put a lot of benches anywhere in our system without them being on a concrete pad. So we can either go through a process of, this whole procedure that we're talking about and say, hey, we need to fundraise for that $150 of materials for that concrete pad. Or if we're accepting the bench and we have capabilities in a building and maintenance line item where we would normally build stuff like that in our annual budget, we can just do the pad and accept the bench as the donation. So I guess in that example, what I'm pointing to is it's part of a regular operating procedure. It's a normal function that we would do. In this case, you just have the additional layer of someone donated the bench. But we do pads, we do sidewalks, we do things like that all of the time. Does it make sense to go through all of this other process and fundraise for that, or just pay for that $150 of material and us do the labor on it?
And I understand that 100% what you're saying, but the wording of that up there, would it maybe say something about that in support of the project that was done, we could approve that out of our budgets or something, but that sounds like the project itself.
Pretty fine line there.
Well, it is, but it's the project itself. We're not gonna fund if somebody says, hey, I want to pay a bench. It's going to be something in support of that.
I think on that sentence right there where it says small projects approved at the administrative level may be managed through the city's regular budget process. I think, weren't you getting at that you wouldn't have to create a special project fund for that, for the small ones like that?
Yes, the point is that we do those sort of improvements to our park system all of the time, and you have line item allocations for park system improvements.
Then why put that in there?
Well, in other examples of policies, it's acknowledging your authority. The acknowledgement is that you have established budget process, that you have set the parameters. This is once again pointing to the parameters that are binding me, which is what you've already established. So we had that. What was the other example where we had that conversation? I believe it was in the resolution itself, maybe, where that question was asked, and the city attorney had recommended that your approval was subject, or that my authority was limited to the normal limits as established by council. It's that same sort of concept. It's recognizing your authority while giving me agency within those parentheses, if that makes sense. It's a lot of extra wording for stuff that we do every day and I already have authority for, but we're creating a process. So this is trying to recognize that normal authority, if that makes sense. But you're putting it in language to say that, yes, you have that authority that you already normally have. Now, where I think that you can decide is, and the layers make sense, is what's the threshold to me? That's what makes sense to me, is to decide what level does it come to you? What level is it stay out of staff thing? So we don't have all these additional layers.
And we use that 10,000 level, which was also in one of our city's grant management policies and procedures, is how one of the starting points for this policy, because a lot of the other affiliate foundations for other cities, other communities don't have any policies like this. So we kind of had to start from scratch. And so we looked in our current policies and procedures and found our grant management policy. And then that policy, 10,000 was a threshold. And then like Josh said, in other category, in other things, 10,000 is the threshold. So we went with, but it's your decision as council.
That's because we're trailblazers.
Seems like it.
Can you go into detail about your fundraising? You're just talking about fundraising if there's not enough money in the project. Are we going to be the ones doing the fundraising, or is that going to be on the nonprofit side?
Yeah, I think the general idea is that's what the community foundation exists for, is to be that avenue and to be the recipient, but also to assist with the fundraising component. Now, that doesn't mean the U.S. city can't be involved. That's not my intent, but I think with Castle Park, all of us either individually or either as the governing body even encourage the community to be a part of it and push for it. That doesn't mean we were out there beating down the doors the way that the parents were, but expressing a general support or something. So I'm never going to preclude the city if you're trying to do a fundraising effort, but it's not conceived of that you have to.
And I was going to ask something else about, it was on part 4 of one of your, I think up the road there a bit you were rolling down there about, it was about whether we would be running that into the next year's budget if something came about that we were going to have to take care of it maintenance wise. Is that, I mean, we try to set budgets up now to take care of stuff like that, ongoing and forward-looking stuff. And it's something that pops up and we have to decide right in the middle of a year. I could see where that could mess up a budget if just arbitrarily speaking, like you've been speaking tonight.
Well, I would say just keep in mind what we're doing here is.
It would be on a $10,000 or more probably budgeted thing, I would imagine.
So you don't have to accept any of these projects. When it starts, the work that we're doing with the submission form and the staff review is to try to give you the heads up of those types of projects that we think may have ongoing cost or other things like that we'll have to consider that may have a budgetary impact. And so the goal with the forms is for you to know up front when you're accepting a project, you choose to do that project, that's a potential obligation. And then once we accept that obligation, then it's like any other improvement or facility or equipment or project that we have in the city. It's our role to maintain in perpetuity until the end of time. And we do that through our regular processes. So to me, this doesn't create anything new that we don't already do. What it creates is a way for ideas and project ideas to get submitted for specific fundraising efforts, but you all are deciding whether to accept them into your system. Once they're in the system, it's a normal part of our operations, like every other park improvement is or thing that we do. Yeah. So I don't want to overcomplicate this, but it is a way of trying to create a policy for something that is new, which is the community foundation money. But in terms of our budgetary practices, everything else, that's same old as everything else that we do. You're just trying to figure out how to handle the donations and how to pick projects, as far as I understand this policy.
Anybody got any questions?
I don't.
It's too complicated. We can try to simplify it, but we
No,
couldn't,
I think
we
that's-
couldn't find any examples. And so we had to create this from scratch because no one else has something like this. So we were trying to figure out what council was asking for at the last meeting. And this is, but you can call it a draft. You can say this is the best version of what we've come up with so far.
As I've read through this, it kept bringing back to my mind, I was on the board at a church here in town, and somebody wanted to donate a really weird thing that a church would not want in its lobby. And we had, as a board, we had no way to say no, because we didn't have a policy. So they had to accept this weird donation. It was a statue, of a person. And it ended up going down into the basement finally, into a closet, which made people mad, some people mad. But this helps avoid traps like that. Like Josh said, the statue of the city manager, maybe he deserves it, maybe not, but at least we'd have a way to judge that. I think this is a great starting point. It may need tweaked from time to time, but I think we should get this resolved quickly because there may be somebody around the corner wanting to donate $250,000 for something, and we'd hate to miss that.
That's ultimately, I think there was a community foundation fund or community foundation that used to exist for that purpose. That if people wanted to make a donation or people were wanting to will their assets to the betterment of the future city, they could do that, and that fund or foundation ceased to exist after time.
Yep.
And so the vision of the community foundation was to provide an avenue for that where residents, non-residents could make donations to that fund or foundation that gave them potential tax benefits, speak to your CPA, and not feel like they were writing that check to the city of Augusta, right? So it was not the city of Augusta as an entity that was the custodian of those funds. It was a foundation, nonprofit. So that was the purpose of this. And I think this process, documented procedure here, gets what the mayor just eloquently stated was a process to receive and or politely decline if it did not fit said vision, mission, and values. And so it seems pretty straightforward. I think the example that came to my mind is if somebody wanted to donate a portion of land to be donated as eventually a park. We all have examples of that we could all probably conjure up as we hear those words. It could be facilitated through this foundation.
I have a perfect example,
Troy
the
Park.
downtown park. That's
Yeah.
exactly how that happened.
That's what was in my mind as I said it. So I'm glad you all drew that conclusion. So yeah, I think it's a vehicle is all it is. It's a vehicle to facilitate giving and betterment of the community.
Also, if some funds got donated and we didn't have any projects that year that could match that, or we can leave the money in there and let it keep growing until you're ready to do a project. You don't have to request the money to do the project.
We don't know how this is going to pan out, but you can also have the situation where you have more project requests that you've approved than money for in the fund. And so some sort of prioritization exercise may need to happen. Let's say you got $30,000 worth of projects, but you have $20,000 worth of funding, then we're going to have to maybe do some evaluation unless there's going to be additional fundraising associated with it. So maybe this is the start of a framework and we build that out over time. But I understand the original ask of, you got to have some way you decide on projects. How does that happen? Well, you either just turn it over to some board or we create something like this and figure out how we're going to handle it. And this is our best attempt.
See any problems with the nonprofit part of it? People getting the write-offs or, the tax possibility of credits and things, and then that money coming to the city and us going back that way toward that, any way, shape, or form?
No, I've looked at this. I've looked at this, and I did not see a problem.
Because just to clarify, the money's not coming to the city.
That's right.
That's 100% the point of the entire foundation and then
I have
separate
no
fund.
control of that.
The city of Augusta does not receive said funds. It's all housed in that Central Kansas Foundation that's the parent of the Augusta Community Foundation.
Until an approved project has been done.
Right.
Yep.
I move for approval of proposed policy number 2025-01 regarding the management of donated funds and funds received from Augusta Community Foundation to be used for community improvement.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody that's worked on this. Okay, item 10, change order number 1 for Phase 1 Redbud Trail Bridge over Highway 54. Staff?
Mayor and Council, this item was sent to me by KDOT. I believe in the last couple of months, there was a couple of things that they had to resolve regarding the project. One of them was suggestion by the vendor regarding the installation process itself. They asked for safety purposes to have some additional traffic control that wasn't called out in the original plan. And so there's a higher cost regarding that traffic control. But then they also, through their submittal process, submitted some materials for the construction that KDOT has approved, and it's an epoxy coating of that part compared to one that wasn't epoxy coated. So it just has to do with corrosion, the long-term longevity. So KDOT sent me the change order, and that's what they're recommending at this time. I got it on Friday, so I had the meeting coming up so I could get it in front of you. I don't think it's holding anything up. The update that I have on the project is they told me that they have pushed the start date back a few weeks because they're waiting for, give me one second. They're waiting for, I believe it is shop drawings is what they told me. They had some final edits on some shop drawings that were being submitted. So they could start anytime now. I believe the drop dead on the start date is like June 12th or something. So technically they have up to that start time, but they could be starting any day depending on when that shop drawing gets reviewed. But in the meantime, KDOT has sent this particular change order, and I do need to verify with them, but my understanding is that this will be subject to the same kind of split as the rest of our grant. I will do that follow up with them to verify that tomorrow. But if you remember, the project came in well below estimates, and the grant was approved for a much higher level. So I believe that even with the change orders, you are still hundreds and thousands, if not millions of dollars below whatever the grant authorization was. So I think we should be good. And but the way that these projects work is that we already had to pay in our local match to KDOT. So now they're essentially administering everything with that money, and that's why they're involved with this change order here. So a little bit different process than maybe you're used to with a city project, but I think it has to do with that grant funding and the way that the KDOT awards work. But I reviewed the change order with our construction engineer, Kirk and Michael, and where staff is supportive of the change. So with that, Mayor and Council, I'll turn it over to you for consideration.
Council.
Mayor, make a motion to approve change order number 1 for Phase 1 Red Bud Trail Bridge over Highway 54, the amount of $20,622.05 due to changes requested by KDOT's designer and contractor for project number 8-TE0508-01, Phase 1 Red Bud Trail Bridge over Highway 54, and authorize city manager Josh Shaw to sign.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
And Mayor and Council, real quick, as long as my understanding of that is correct, the 20% split for the city is about $4,100 on a 1.5 something million project. So it is relatively tiny in the grand scheme of things. Hopefully they don't run into a lot of other things, but we'll see how that pans out. And then I'll also tell you that I just got the notice from KDOT that the federal fund exchange allocations, although several months late, have finally been announced, and we should be getting similar allocation amount to what we got last year, which was, I think, around $115,000. So you'll have a future item coming to you for us to make that request for those federal fund exchange dollars to be applied towards our match for this particular project, for the construction portion of the project.
Okay.
Thank you.
That moves us down to matters from and for council. So we have a retreat scheduled for this Saturday, the 12th. And I've heard that maybe some of us won't be here. So I need a show of hands of everybody that can be here Saturday, the 12th.
Oh, wow.
We don't have a quorum, so there's no use to have that meeting.
Okay, we'll need to reschedule then.
Okay.
So the item tonight was related to the time of the meeting, because when we made the motion last time, we actually approved that time window, which means if we're still in the middle of conversation at 3 p.m., then you do actually have to cut it off. So I was going to suggest maybe removing that in case you want to leave early or in case it drags on longer. But if we're not going to have a quorum, then we got a different problem to solve. I don't have any particular dates in mind. We did have guest speakers that we were lining up for that as well. So why don't, rather than trying to settle that tonight, let me go back to our staff and see if we can come up with some suggestions. Obviously, it won't happen before our next council meeting on the 21st, but we will try to have some suggestions for you at that meeting, and then we can look at everybody's schedule then.
Okay. Do we need to undo that?
I think we need to make a motion to, to terminate that meeting. What would be the right wording?
So Mayor, make a motion to change or to cancel the strategic retreat number 2 work session for Saturday out April 12, 2025, beginning at 9 to 3, and to repeal please vote regarding this work session.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Mr. Martin, do you have anything tonight?
No, Mr. Mayor, I'm good.
Mr. Burt?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Bailey?
Well, I was down at the park bench talking to the owner there a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about he can't have any food trucks out front, and he didn't really understand why. And I'm like, I don't really know, so let me ask.
Yeah, so you have a food truck well, you have a food truck ordinance that we have talked about in the past, or some ideas that have been thrown around, but there's never been a direction provided by the council what to do about it. Right now, I believe our code prohibits food trucks on public property. So anytime it's come up in the past, the conditions under which they're allowable is if they're associated with an approved event that council has approved, or we have encouraged them to find places on private property for the food trucks to locate. So you've seen them at the plaza, you've seen them at the old Walmart, Dillon's parking lot. It's off of public property, so it's not something that we deal with. But if they're going into our parks or on our streets, that's where they have to be associated with an event, or our reading of the code says they're not allowed. So we've talked about it in the past as a way of creating a food culture in the community, of having some sort of process where that could be approved, whether that's designated spots or just, some other procedure. And we've done research on it in the past, but it's never been pushed by the council or a direction to staff to draft something up. So that's the answer where it stands right now. If you want us to work on it, then we can work on pulling something together, but we haven't gotten that direction in the past.
Josh. So the gentleman actually reached out to me as well too. And so I had told him kind of the history of that as well last week when I spoke to him. And I told him that I look at what some other cities did to allow it. One of the concerns that have come up in the past is regarding parking. And we kind of talked about the spaces, and I went down there and looked at it. And I think it would be required to park parallel, which would take up quite a few spaces. And from personal experience, I went down there Friday night and drove around for about 5 minutes to find a parking spot 2 blocks away from where I was going in the 500 block. So if you had food trucks out there taking up 3 to 4 parking spots per food truck, we could potentially have a huge issue with parking. And he did request specifically during the open consumption timeframes, and then possibly on Sundays, which would help with some of our businesses. But that's also when all the food businesses are open downtown as well still. And so that would be definitely something the council would need to consider, is the parking issues that we have downtown already.
And can I just say, that is a fantastic problem to have. Like,
Absolutely.
come
It was
on.
amazing. I was
That's
shocked
good stuff.
at what I saw.
I agree.
Let's keep that up.
Yeah,
Should've
I think direction that would help us too is there's a difference between allowing food trucks to park on the street in those parking spaces, or also staff helping to identify maybe some private lots that are underutilized on the weekends and during common consumption area. And that way the food trucks are still on private property. It's just business owners would need to work together to schedule those. So I think there's definitely some unused parking lots in that area on the weekend, and after like 8 to 5, maybe there could be like a purposeful space. Or is the goal to just allow food trucks on the street? Because those are 2 very different things from a planning perspective for me.
Well, I assumed it had something to do with parking, because like Eric, I've been down there quite often on Friday or Saturday.
And there's also
It's-
ADA requirements that we have to follow, so we would need to build those in as well if we were allowing them to park on the street. I know, well, I
They
saw
could
some,
go down the
maybe
ADA walk.
like
and
El
without-
Dorado has, in their policy, they allow so many feet for ADA accessibility around the mobile food truck. So it's just another thing to consider.
Short answer is, if it's something you're interested in, we can work on it, and there are ways of allowing it. And we need that direction from council, because it's not something we're working on right now.
Okay.
Well, I don't know what everybody else thinks, but I think it'd be
I'm interested.
a good idea.
I think we're at the beginning of some momentum that we can do some
Yeah.
fun things with. Yeah.
My turn?
Yes.
I'll be quick. I just think we need to look into the possibility of doing some more dog stations downtown, where the messes are just getting worse as people are enjoying our downtown. They're bringing their dogs down and making quite a mess down there. If we could put a couple more down there to pick up after themselves, that doesn't mean that they will, but it sure might encourage them to, if we could get, because it's
Yeah, I
getting
think-
worse, in my opinion.
I think it's the same.
person.
Said people and dogs.
Okay.
And if it is, it doesn't help to say, hey, you go pick that up.
Yeah.
Is that a direction to buy more and put them down there or no?
Well, don't we have a vote on that?
I mean, I don't think throwing a couple extra is going to hurt. The problem is catching people in the act, so.
It's not the people, it's the dogs.
Well, that's a good thing then, right?
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, it has happened. I'm
Getting one of those vehicle chargers.
So Shane, to your point, Josh was asking for clarity. So where would your recommendation be for those?
Well, if we could put one on for sure, the 400 block, I'd like to see one on the 500 block as well. And I think we got one on 600 by the Veterans Park, I believe, or we had one there unless somebody vandalized it.
There's one on the path, I think.
Okay, yeah. That would be my suggestion, but I don't know. Do we need to make a motion or? what are we gonna do?
How many do we have now? Do we know?
I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head. So,
Let-
I mean, just
let's let
buying.
staff review that.
Yeah, but buying the station is one thing. Then you buy the bags on an ongoing basis, and then staff builds it into their rotation of restocking all of the stations. So I know we've got them over on Custer. We've got them in some of the parks. We got them downtown. I can't tell you how many we've got. Cemetery, which is regrettable, but
I know it's a crappy job, but okay.
You're full of it today.
Okay.
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Hey, I want to shout out to Anthony and the guys out there patching holes today. I was out riding and they did get the one up there on Belmont and Ohio patch. So I just want to let everybody know that they are on like a rotation for this. So, it takes a while for those potholes and craters to be created. And it also takes a while for those guys to get out there and patch them. But they are out there doing it.
Also, there's a spot on the city website to turn in pothole repair needs. So to you citizens out there, instead of putting it on Facebook, look it up on the website and you can fill in the address or the location and somebody will see that, maybe quicker than Facebook.
That's it.
Mr. Moore?
Mine was the same as Sean. So Anthony and crew, thank you.
Mayor, make a motion to move into executive session for 15 minutes for preliminary discussion of the acquisition of real property pursuant to the preliminary discussion of the acquisition of real property exception, KSA 754319B6. I ask the city manager, Josh Shaw, assistant city manager, Cammie Shrove, and the city attorney join the council in executive session. The open meeting of the governing body will reconvene in the council chambers at 9:40 PM.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll be back in a little bit.
Bye. So Mayor, make a motion to exit executive session where no action was taken.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to exit executive session where no action was taken. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
So Mayor, make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Got a motion and a second to adjourn this meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Good night.
Yeah, good night.
Erica, do I have to sign stuff?